Welcome to another episode of Practically Political. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Hey, Dave, let's get right to this. So Joe Biden said when he was a candidate in the 2020 debate, he said, I would transition from the oil industry. And what's actually happened is that he's transitioning us from the domestic U.S. oil industry to the foreign oil industry. This is the type of doublespeak and virtue signaling that we're seeing not only from Biden, but also Western Europeans like the UK, for example. What they say is that, we're not going to sully ourselves with domestic energy production, but we're going to be more than happy to run to the arms of these despotic regimes like Russia, Venezuela, OPEC, and Iran. Biden seems to be bullied and pressured, and he caves to these domestic environmentalists to do things like ruin the Keystone pipeline, halt domestic oil and gas leases, push through, new SEC regulations that are going to choke our economy, new trucking emission rules, greenhouse gas emission rules. I could get going on. But my question to you is, do you think that the Democrats will ever stop being bullied by these green, basically eco-terrorists?
Well, I don't think, I think that's a little dramatic here. Let's take a step back. I don't think it's necessarily eco-terrorist. I think the whole world wants to transition from fossil fuels to alternative energy. And I'm really glad you brought this up because my major concern has been, and this is what drove me crazy about Bernie Sanders. He's like, well, we have to do everything we can for climate change, but I'm against fracking and I'm against nuclear. Well, you can't get to alternative fuels without a transition plan, and you can't have a transition plan without fracking, i.e. natural gas, and nuclear. I think nuclear should be about a third of our power. Natural gas is a transition fuel. So what's happened is, and this is my concern, is that in an effort to switch over, a lot of countries, a lot of municipalities have started switching, but they didn't have a transition plan. And more importantly than that, Carrie, they didn't have a backup if there was a hiccup in the market, which is precisely what we've experienced. Now, I think there's a little drama on the right about these oil leases. There's a lot of oil leases that have been issued that have not been used. So there's plenty of opportunities to drill in this country. I think the reason is that the oil industry has cut back because it just didn't make a lot of economic sense over the last few years. And that's true. And I also believe that it was foolish to cancel the Keystone pipeline. And I've been very vocal about this before because so often, and this is the same thing we do with drugs, we take a supply approach to what is a demand issue. If that tar sands oil is dirty, but if it doesn't come through our country, they'll sell it to China. And they've been shipping it on trains, which have been resulting in some of the most unbelievably evil fires you've ever seen, where the heat's so bad the fire department can't get there for a couple of days. So the answer to your question is, I think it was silly to kill energy programs until we have alternative fuels. And what could derail the whole thing is if the energy markets blow up even more than they do now, and the slow but steady gains that the public has made in terms of accepting climate change and wanting to act with it are going to be lost. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think I agree with you on Keystone and some of what you said, but I think you're being a bit too generous to these Democrats because not only are they, killing any sort of middle transition, they don't even seem interested in doing that, and they're not interested in any form of compromise. They're not based in reality. And I think what's really offensive that the American people understand is that this is not, you can't just pin this on Putin. That's what they're trying to do. And the messaging, Biden's giving, briefings to teenage TikTokers and to try to brainwash them to say this is all Putin's fault. But people aren't buying it if you look at all the polling. And I think that the Democrats, they're doing all they can. It looks like in your state, Gavin Newsom's trying to give out, hundreds of dollars in gas vouchers. We'll see if he's able to get that through. But it's also a little too late. And I think that that's why we're going to see a red wave in November.
Well, and I think, again, there's been a little hype on the right that certainly, look, gas prices are like inflation. In the short term, there's very little a president can do about them. But for better or worse, presidents get blamed for them. Look what happened to Jimmy Carter in the 70s. So, and I do believe that it doesn't look good where we're offering asking these petrostates to fill in when there are other sources that we could do. What we need to do is we need to set up an infrastructure, which will take time, but it's very doable, so people don't need Russian energy. Again, Russia is a gas station with nukes. You take away their energy money, that's the one thing that would make Putin move. And I wish we'd done that beforehand.